All right, this was one of the questions. So this is your parallelogram one. It says in the directions, complete the table by solving the parallelogram shown in the figure. And then in parentheses, and this was important because it was confusing for the placement of C and D. It said the lengths of the diagonals are given by C and D. Round your answers to two decimal places. So if you didn't have that, I would actually assume that D was half of this diagonal, okay? But it's not. It's the whole diagonal. And C is this whole diagonal. If that was the case, let's just say if it only wanted half, then remember this is a parallelogram and parallelograms diagonals bisect each other. So if you did get just half, you would take the whole diagonal and cut it in half to get half of the diagonal, okay? All right, so for this one, it gave, so on this specific one, A was 27 and B was 43. And then the angle that was given was 112. So this whole angle here is 112. So if I use the top triangle first to find C, then another property of parallelograms that comes into play is that opposite sides are congruent. So 43 goes here and 27 goes here. If I do that, then I have side angle side here to get side C. So C squared would equal A squared plus B squared minus 2AB cosine, letter that we're looking for, C. Thank you. All right, so then I'd get 27 squared plus 43 squared minus 2 times 27 times 43 times the cosine of 112. And I'm going to square root that at the end so I can do it in the calculator like that. Square root 27 squared plus 43 squared minus 2 times 27 times 43. Times the cosine of 112. And C is 58.72. It said to keep 2, right? Yeah, 2. That's that one. Then to find the bottom one. Nope, sorry, not that one. To find D, I have to use the other side. And another property of parallelograms is that the consecutive angles are supplementary. So if I did the 180 minus the 112, I get 68 degrees for that theta, which I think was one of the questions, right? Yeah, that was also a question. Now you have side angle side with that triangle. So I'm finding D. D squared would equal the other two sides. So, well, not the square root yet. 27 squared plus 43 squared minus 2 times 27 times 43 times the cosine of 68. And then I would square root that whole thing. Square. D is the whole line. It says it in the directions. It doesn't look like it if you look at just the diagram. It looks like half, but the directions say it's the whole thing. I fell for it too. 2 times 27 times 43 times cosine 68. So D is 41.33. Questions on that one? Yeah.
How do you know theta was 68 again?
Because the consecutive angles are one after the other around a parallelogram are supplementary. They have to add up to 180. So this one would also be 68. This like relies on, which standardized tests do too, your properties of parallelograms. Opposite sides are congruent. Opposite angles are congruent. Consecutive angles are supplementary. Diagonals bisect each other. Like all of those are properties of parallelogram that especially standardized tests assume you remember. Yeah. I didn't put one on your quiz, but I'm not ruling it out for your test. All right. Sorry. I was like, graphs? None. There's no diagrams on your quiz.
Oh, I mean like word problems.
Word problems too. Yeah. So there's 8 there total questions. There's which I might eliminate one just because of timing tomorrow, but let's just say it doesn't. 2 law of sines, 2 law of cosines, area, word problem. Yep. Okay, so 2 ships leave port at 9 a.m. One travels at a bearing of north 53 degrees west at 8 miles an hour, and the other travels at a bearing of south 67 degrees west at 13 miles an hour. So to start my bearings, I'm going to draw my north, south, east, very crooked east, west, but you get the point, east, west line. And I'm going to start with the first one. So if it's going northwest, then it's 53 degrees here. And there's the traveling of that first ship. Now, what's different with this question than what we did before is that before it would have told you, God bless you, the distance traveled there, right? And I would just label that. But it doesn't tell you the distance traveled. What does it tell you? How many miles per hour it's going. So how do I find distance if I have a rate? By the time. Good. So distance is rate times time. If it leaves at 9 and I want to know how far they are at noon, how much time is that? 3 hours. So I have to do 8 times 3 to get the distance there, which is 24. Then I go the other direction. It goes southwest, and that's 67 degrees. And this time it's going 13 miles an hour for the same amount of time. So 13 times 3 is 39. That's that distance traveled. And it wants to know how far apart they are at the end there. So I'm looking for this side. I could call this A, B, C. You call it whatever you want. If this is side A, then that's the one I'm solving for. So A squared equals B squared plus C squared minus 2BC cosine A. So 24 squared plus 39 squared minus 2 times 24 times 39 times the cosine of, I need this inside angle. How do I find it? Good. All 3 of these form a line, right? So if all 3 of them form a line, then 180 minus 53 minus 67 is 60 degrees. Now you have the angle inside. So 24 squared plus 39 squared minus 2 times 24 times 39 times the cosine of 60 is 1,161, and that's my A squared. So I got to square root it. And A equals 34.07, specifically miles. It said round to 1 decimal place. So 34.1. I would say between like the quizzes tomorrow, obviously there's different forms between a makeup quiz, between a test. There's a lot of different versions of word problems. And in some of those word problem versions, you will see a question like that. So you've got to make sure that you know how to do it. I think there's another question on your quiz review like that so that you can practice it. But you've got to be able to practice these. Yeah. So this one says 110-foot vertical tower is to be erected on the side of a hill that makes a 6-degree angle with the horizontal. Find the length of each of the 2 guy wires that will be anchored 75 feet uphill and downhill from the base of the tower. Note that x equals, in this case, it would have been 110. In the figure, round your answers to 1 decimal places, or 1 decimal place. Okay, so there's actually 2 different triangles happening here, right? One with a guy wire is just a wire. Somebody last year was like, what the heck's a guy wire? It's just a wire, okay? One in which your cell phone tower and the wire and the ground make that triangle. And I'll tell you this right now, you would have to be able to draw, I would say probably not 2 triangles, but at least 1 triangle without a picture on a slope. So be prepared, okay? So because it says that it's 6 degrees slope, remember that 6 degrees can go in either of those places. It can either go from the ground up or it can go from horizontal down. Those are alternate interior angles, so I could put them in either spot. Which means that this full angle here is your 90 degree plus the slope, which means this is 96 degrees. Now I know this is 75 and I know my tower is 110. So to find x, x is, this one's the longer wire, this one's the shorter wire. So I'm going to find, this is the longer wire. I'm going to find longer wire first. This one, well, her question had 110 instead of 100 for the height of the tower. That's why I changed it. But it would have been 100. Either way, you have side angle side. So to get the longer wire, which we're calling x here, x squared would equal 75 squared plus 110 squared minus 2 times 75 times 110 times the cosine of 96. So I square root 75, 110, 2 times 75 times 110 times cosine 96. And I get x is 139.46. That's this one. And it said 1 decimal place, so it'd be 139.5. Then the other direction, think about what's happening to that angle. That 90 degrees is being cut smaller, right? If it was 90 degrees, it would look like that. Because it's up the slope, I take the 6 off the 90 degrees. And so this is 84, which these two should add up to 180, so that should make sense. And then the side lengths are 75, 110, and 84. So let's call this y. Y squared would equal 110 squared plus 75 squared minus 2 times 110 times 75 times the cosine of 84. Yeah. Where'd I get what? So because your tower is on a slant, right? They say that degrees is 6 degrees here. If I draw the horizontal through, on the left-hand side, I'd have to add the 6, so it's 90 plus 6. On the right-hand side, I have to take away the 6 from 90. Does that make sense? So if it's uphill, you're losing the degree, whereas it's downhill, it's getting bigger. So square root 110 squared plus 75 squared minus 2 times 110 times 75 times cosine 84. 126.49, which is 126.5. Questions? All right, let's work through as much of the warm-up as we can. Yeah, we're gonna have to go fast. We're gonna go, obviously I'll do 1 because all those examples we just did were side, angle, side. So 1 is your side, side, side. Remember with law of cosines, if you're going to switch, what do you have to start with? Have to start with the biggest one. If you stick to law of cosines the whole time, you don't have to. But if you're gonna switch to law of sines, then you have to do to the biggest one. So I always start biggest one just because of that. But I would say the cosine of C equals A squared plus B squared minus C squared over 2AB. So I get cosine of C equals 7 squared plus 10 squared minus 15 squared over 2AB. 7 and 10. If you didn't have your calculator with you yesterday, you better have gone home and practiced the fraction part of this, because if you group them wrong, you're going to get an error, and I will not help you with it tomorrow. So you need to make sure that you've practiced these. This gives me angle C is 122.878, so 88. Then I can do A. I can do either one, but cosine A, for example, B squared plus C squared minus A squared over 2BC. So 10 squared plus 15 squared minus 7 squared over 2, 10, 15. And I cosine negative 1 that. Ten squared plus 15 squared minus 7 squared over 2 times 10 times 15. And angle A is 23.07. And then I subtract those two from 180, and I get angle B, 34.05. Remember, side, 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 and side, angle, side are the ones you're doing law of cosines. Everything else is law of sines. So for 2, I would first find side A, and then I would use that to find the other 2 angles. Well, the other angle, and then subtract it from 180. Then came the area. What's the formula for the area here? If I have side, side, side. How do I find S? Start with that. S is? Add them and divide by 2 and don't round. And then the area is the square root of s times s minus a, s minus b, s minus c. So my s here is 10.85. And then I would do 10.85 times 10.85 minus a and 10.85 minus b and 10.85 minus c. If you can at least give me your a and you don't round it, I mean your s, sorry, then you don't have to write the whole thing out every time. It takes longer to write it than it does to actually compute it half the time. 2.5, 10.85 minus.
Is this going to be the style of questions on the quiz? Okay, so just like pretty straightforward.
I mean, minus your word problems.